What about the most egregious tax increase in all? That tax on our kids ballooned over the last 5-6 years to $30,000 per person. I am going to be fiscally responsible, and the fact is, if you would support a pay-as-you-go in this government, we wouldn't be in the situation where we have every man, woman, and child, and every child to be born with a $30,000 debt. All saddling our kids with more and more debt. This won't get me contributions from Jack Abramoff, but it's sure the right thing to do for Montana. The fact of the matter is Senator Burns has never been able to balance his checkbook in private life, and he's not been able to do it in public life. And it's time to send somebody back there that has been able to balance their checkbook in private life. If my family would have spent money, and I would have spent money, like they do in Washington, D.C., I'd have lost our farm in the 30s. My grandparents would have, my parents would have lost it in the 60s, and we wouldn't be there for 28 years. You need somebody who can balance the budget, and we've also done it at the state level. That's rapidly disappearing. That's a Montana value. And it's disappearing to the likes of $30,000 in debt for every man, woman, and child, my granddaughter, my grandson yet to be born in January. That's not fair. That takes away opportunities. We need to have somebody back there who can balance a checkbook. Let's talk about the debt. $30,000 per person. Economy's growing double digits, and these guys can't balance the checkbook. They're spending more than they're taking in. And they call themselves fiscal conservatives. You've got to have folks who can use arithmetic in the equation. People who know how to balance a checkbook in the private sector and in the public sector. I've done it in both places. You know, the fact is you need to have people back there that have experience in balancing a checkbook and can set priorities. I've been able to balance a checkbook in the private sector and in the public sector. My opponent, the one on the far right, has not been able to do that on either occasion. We've got to have people back in Washington, D.C. that are willing to live within their means. Senator Burns has increased the debt limit many, many times over, except on election years, and then he doesn't. It's time you have somebody back there that knows how to balance a checkbook. I've balanced it on my farm. I've balanced it in the state legislature. And we do it for 2 years at a time. And we did it this year without increasing taxes. That's my record.
Approaching $10 trillion, it's more than doubled since this president took over. It's not tax and spends with the Bush administration, the Republicans. It's borrow and spend, borrowing our next generation into poverty.
Senator Burns is a borrow and spender. I want a pay-as-you-go system. Senator Burns is a borrow and spender. In fact, he's spending our kids' and grandkids' future as we speak. You know, what's going on right now is we're borrowing our kids and taking away opportunity in the process. It's like me buying a new pickup and saying, all right, my grandson's going to pay for it when he gets born. Truth is that there has to be prioritization, and we can't keep running the presses back like we are. We do need change in this country. Make no mistake about it. We want to talk about our kids. We're going to talk about opportunity for our kids. A national debt of $30,000 per person is going to take away that opportunity. I will do my very best to balance that budget because I am fiscally responsible. Senator Burns cannot make that claim.
While Brian Schweitzer and I cut taxes and balanced the budget.
The other point is that as far as the debt goes, you know, saying that the debt's only half as big as it was last year is like saying I'm maintaining my weight gain.
We have to get our arms around the fiscal condition of this country. Doubling the national debt in the last 5 years is not sustainable if you're in business. It's not sustainable if you're a family. It's not sustainable if you're in any sector of government. And it's not sustainable at the federal level. And a lot of that has to do with priorities. And people say, well, you know, how are you going to fund this? How are you going to fund that? It's a big pie. It's a big pie at the state level, and we balance the budget. And it's a huge pie at the federal level. Mm-hmm. And we've got a situation going on overseas right now, and I'll preface what I'm going to say right now because there's a funeral tomorrow that really drives this issue home. Mm-hmm. We need to support our soldiers. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We need to make sure that they have the best possible equipment and the best possible protection over there. We need to make sure when they come home that we live up to the agreements to our veterans after they come home. That being said, we really need to work together to develop a plan. to redeploy those troops.
Yeah.
And do it in such a way it doesn't turn the Middle East upside down. And that has to be done if we're going to get control of our fiscal problems in this country.
While Senator Burns writes rubber checks that our kids are going to have to pay for, to the tune of right now, and it's increased dramatically over the last 5 years, to the tune of $30,000 per person. That's going to take opportunity away from every child that's out there. I got into this race because I'm concerned about the next generation. We better start paying some attention to the next generation, Senator Burns.
Now Jon Tester's running for the U.S. Senate to teach Washington something new: honest government, energy independence, and to stop the waste that passes on debt to our children.
The issues that we deal with are complex. They're complex, but they're not issues that we can't handle. The deficit, the debt, quite honestly, we're playing around with something on this debt limit thing that could drive this country back into a severe depression. It's nothing to play with. By the same token, I don't think there's anybody on either side of the aisle, in the U.S. Senate at least, that don't understand that the deficit and the debt is something we need to get our arms around. It's not nuclear physics. It's putting everything on the table and developing a plan in the short term and the long term for our budget so that everybody feels a little bit of pain and nobody feels all of it.
Couple of issues, two issues in Montana that you think that are working so well for the Democrats that perhaps could work more in other parts of the country.
Well, there's a lot of them. I don't know where to start, really. I mean, fiscal responsibility would be one. Absolutely, as we've watched the other party talk about how fiscally responsible they are as they double our national debt. We have to be running a surplus in Montana right now because we know how to spend the dollars and get the most bang out of the buck. Right now we've got a situation where our children are burdened, and every one of us are burdened with a $30,000 debt. That's got to change. We've got to have some fiscal responsibility. If you want to talk about fiscal responsibility back in Washington, D.C., Senator Burns has voted to extend the cap every time, except for election years. Then he's voted to hold true to it. We have increased the debt on every man, woman, and child and every kid that's to be born in this country to $30,000 an individual. We cannot run our families like that. We cannot run our businesses like that. If my grandparents would have ran the farm like that, it would have been gone in the 30s. My folks, it would have gone in the 50s or 60s, and we wouldn't have the opportunity we have now. Last session, we balanced the budget. We balanced the budget. We have a 90-day session. Even with the special session, we finished ahead of time. Save some money. And at some point in time, we're going to have to make the difficult decisions to balance this budget, just like we do in the state legislature, just like we do at our homes, just like we do at our farms and ranches, small businesses and working families. But right now, the folks back in Washington, D.C., Senator Burns included, can't balance a budget. We need somebody that can. For Charla and me, working hard and watching every penny is the only way to make ends meet. So the way Washington's spending our money just isn't right.